I am going to be sharing with you the books that I read in the month of July, and this video is a little bit later coming because we were away for just under 3 weeks and we've just got back and I've had time to sit and process all the things that I read. So I apologise that I'm a little bit behind schedule, but let's just jump in and talk about the books because I had a good reading month in July and I'm excited to share it with you. So I know that I literally just said I had a really great reading month in July, but that doesn't include the first book, which I only sadly gave 2 stars to, and I was so disappointed because I had such high hopes for this book and it just ultimately fell really short of the mark for me, and that was Gather the Daughters by Jenny Melamed. And this is a post-apocalyptic sci-fi adult novel in which a society live a secluded life on an island, and they basically follow some rules set down by 10 families known as the Ancestors, and these rules basically orchestrate the power and the rule of men, and they involve things like women submitting entirely to their husbands and daughters submitting entirely to their fathers. The general consensus is that there are wastelands around the island, but that people who live there eke out these awful existences, and so they're very safe and secure on this island. And each summer all of the children who haven't yet come of age, so boys and girls, are allowed to roam wild, and the adults kind of hunker down in their cabins and the children are left to run wild. Now, going into this book and based on the blurb, I thought that we would be following the story of one girl in particular who is on the cusp of womanhood. So she's about to come to the end of her summers of being allowed to run and roam wild and free, and she sees something that causes her to question everything that she has been told. And to me that just sounded so fascinating and so interesting, but I really didn't feel that that is what the book was about. And I'm going to talk about some spoilers, so I'll put a timestamp here, and if you want to skip ahead then feel free to do that. But basically there is rape in this book, there is incest in this book, we are following what is essentially a cult in this book, and for me, books, I'm not opposed to reading about those kind of topics in a book, but for me a book that has that kind of plot should push boundaries and should challenge and should have some reason why it's asking the questions or narrating the behaviours or observing what it's observing. There should be a point to it, even if I disagree with the challenges or the points that the author is making. I feel like there should be something, there's some reason why the author is choosing to explore the topics that they are choosing to explore, and I just didn't get that at all from this book. It could almost have been a non-fiction about a cult, and I sort of feel like if I'd wanted to read a non-fiction about a cult, I'd have picked up a non-fiction about a cult. The fictional element in this book just didn't do it for me at all. We're basically taken through a story that teaches you nothing. There's no point, no obvious point to it. We're basically just reading a book about rape, incest and brainwashing, and I just thought, what on earth was the point of reading it? And having said all of that, you know, there were some positives to come out of it. I thought that the writing was very beautiful and very poetic. I enjoyed the way that the author wrote. It's just the plot and what she chose to write about just fell so short of the mark for me, and it really felt a bit misleading in terms of the blurb and the way that this book is described. I don't feel like that's what it is at all. I feel as though it is exactly like reading a non-fiction about a cult, and then it just ends and you don't even get any closure to the end of the story. So this girl sees basically unrest begins to kind of bubble up among some of the women, and one of the women in particular is quite vocal about challenging things, and she is murdered, and this girl sees this happening and begins to question stuff, but even that's not fully explored, and a family get off the island in the end and even that's not fully explored, and it just, I don't know, it just fell so short of where I was expecting it to go, and maybe I went into it with too high expectations. I don't know, but on the whole I could easily have given this book a miss. I mean, I might look out for some other works by the author because I did like her writing style. I just thought the plot was sucky. The next book that I picked up was slightly better. It was City of Lost Souls by Cassandra Clare. This is book 5 in the Shadowhunters Mortal Instruments series, which consists of 6 books, and I'm reading these because I want to get to the end of this particular series and pick up some of Cassandra Clare's other work. And that is not to say that I don't enjoy these. I've talked about these books in quite a few of my recent wrap-ups because I'm trying to make my way through them, and so if you watched my videos before you will probably be familiar with my thoughts and feelings on them. I view them as very easy to pick up books, and they're not complex, they're not complicated, they're quite easy, trashy, throwaway reads, and I enjoy them for that reason. They are YA paranormal romance books. We're primarily following 2 protagonists, Jace and Clary, who are in a romantic relationship. At the very start of these books, Clary finds out that she is a shadow hunter, and she knew nothing about the world that she is supposed to inhabit. She had no idea that the human world also featured creatures, or downworlders as they're known in this book, such as werewolves and vampires and the fae, etc, etc. So I can't really talk too much about this book because obviously it is the 5th in a series, but if you like YA, if you like a little bit of fantasy, magical realism, paranormal, anything like that, and you're looking for something really easy to pick up and read, then I would definitely recommend these. I have to say that I'm a little bit bored of the Jace Clary dynamic now, but I am 5 books in, and to me, being an adult trying to read a young adult novel about young adults doing their young adult romance thing, it's just wearing a little bit thin for me. But yeah, on the whole, enjoyed it. I'm interested to see how Cassandra Clare is going to conclude this particular part of the series, and yeah, then I'll move on to some of her other stuff. The next book I picked up was probably one of my favourite ones that I read this month. It wasn't my favourite, but it was definitely in the running, and that was Final Girls by Riley Sager. However, I said it was one of my favourite, but it was also so creepy, and I had to read it so quickly. And I don't know if it's because the trauma that our protagonist experiences takes place in a remote lodge, and as I was reading it, I was on a French farm in the middle of nowhere, and it kind of just hit a little bit too close to home, and it was just really giving me the creeps. But yeah, I just raced through it. I thought that it was so good, so fast paced, doesn't let up for a second. So basically, as I said, this doesn't let up for a second. This is a super fast paced thriller, and we're focusing primarily on the story of our protagonist Quincy, who, when she is in college or university, she goes away with a group of her friends for the weekend, and something happens, and Quincy is the only one who survives, and she is immediately thrown into a category known as the Final Girls, which features 2 other women who also survived very similar experiences, and so the media refer to these girls as the Final Girls. And then out of the blue, one day, the first, or the original Final Girl, is found having committed suicide, but Quincy is not quite sure that that is necessarily the case. And then as she's dealing with this kind of curveball in her life, the second Final Girl, Sam, turns up in Quincy's life, and all kinds of things happen, and we're just hurtled off on this journey, and it's kind of an uncovering of what really happened to Quincy, and who was involved, who wasn't involved. Is Quincy more guilty than she maybe appears? What really happened to Lisa, the first Final Girl? And it's just all this overload of information, but it's so good. Riley Sager, I feel like, hits all the right notes with this. I didn't see the ending coming at all. Well, I saw it coming like literally as it was right in front of my face, and I was like, oh yeah, of course. But yeah, just so good. I picked this up because it was on offer in Aldi for like £2.99 or something, and I thought, I've never seen this author, I did quite like Gone Girl, and Stephen King has blurbed this saying if you liked Gone Girl you'll like this. I decided to pick it up on a whim, but I'm so glad that I did. And it's funny because since then I've seen Riley Sager everywhere. I think that maybe a new book from Riley Sager has just been released or something, but it's really funny that I've never ever seen this author before, and then all of a sudden out of the blue seeing the name everywhere. But yeah, really, really good. Definitely gonna look out for some more works from Riley, and yeah, creepy but good. I gave this book 4 stars. It was fast-paced, it hit all the right notes. I enjoyed the journey that the author took us on. They didn't let up for a second. I didn't see the ending coming. Just all the right things that you want to hear when you're picking up a thriller, and I would definitely recommend it. And yeah, I will definitely be looking for more of Riley Sager's works if I can be brave enough to read them. Next, I picked up The Cactus by Sarah Haywood. This was a pre-order, and I think it was recommended to me via NetGalley or Amazon, I can't now remember, based on the fact that I enjoyed The Rosie Project and Eleanor Oliphant. And this book certainly has the same vibes as that. Our protagonist is a woman in her 40s called Susan Green, who is quite prickly, quite standoffish with the people in her life, but she has her life set up exactly as she wants it. She has a good job, she has a good home, she's very, very content. She has a relationship that is mutually beneficial, but it is because of that relationship that her life gets turned upside down. Her very perfect, structured, ordered life. First of all, we begin with the passing of her mother, which is quite unexpected, and then Susan reveals that she is pregnant. So her life is about to change hugely, and we basically follow the 9 months of Susan's pregnancy and the changes and the journey that she goes on as she has to accept and move forward and make changes in her life. And on the whole, I really enjoyed the book. I thought that it was really good. I appreciated what the author was trying to do. It isn't quite the same as Eleanor Oliphant. I found that it was a little bit more abrasive, if that makes sense, and Susan as a character was much more difficult to connect with than Eleanor. Although Eleanor and Susan have much of the same characteristics, you could understand in the end why Eleanor was the way that she was, but you don't really get that from Susan. There's not really any kind of satisfactory explanation or understanding. You just kind of have to take it at face value, but it makes her quite a difficult character to connect with. As I said, I appreciated what the author was trying to do. There were some bits that I just found really hilarious and laugh out loud, but as a character she is quite standoffish and quite abrupt, but you do get to watch her go on this kind of journey of self-discovery and self-realization, and she relaxes and accepts things a little bit more, and it is nice to read, but I would say that it is not quite on the same level as The Rosie Project and Eleanor Oliphant. So if you enjoyed those, then I would definitely say give it a try, and perhaps that you will find the character easier to connect with than I did. But yeah, it was a good book. I would definitely look out for more from Sarah Haywood, but it just didn't blow my socks off in the way that I think I was expecting it to. And then the final book that I read this month, I don't actually have a physical copy of because I lent it to somebody at work, and that is Cersei by McGlynn Miller. But this was my total favourite book of the month. I gave it 5 stars. I adored it. I wanted to simultaneously always be reading it, but read it so slowly that it didn't have to end, and for me that is a mark of a great book. And I was slightly apprehensive going into Cersei because it's a Greek mythological retelling, which is, apart from the Percy Jackson books, that is not something that I have really ever read about or read in that particular genre, so I didn't really know what to expect, plus the fact that it has received quite a lot of high praise from people whose reading opinion I really respect. So I was a little bit apprehensive going in, but oh my goodness, McGlynn Miller's writing style was just so on point. It almost didn't matter what I was reading about because I just wanted to read and absorb and be a part of the words that she was writing. There was just something so enthralling and so engaging and so beautiful about her writing that I was just instantly hooked. So the story of Cersei, if you're not familiar, this is as I said, a retelling of the Greek myth about Cersei, who is the daughter of Helios, God of the Sun, I want to say. I don't have the book to fact check, so forgive me if I'm a little bit off. And basically Cersei is not like Helios's other children, and she does something and finds herself banished to an island away from everybody else, and it's kind of her story and her journey. And honestly, I loved it so much that whilst we were away, I went and ordered The Song of Achilles, which was Madeline Miller's debut novel, even though I knew that it would be like 3 weeks before I would be able to get hold of it and read it, and it would just have to sit on the doormat. I just wanted to have a copy so that I could start to read it when we got back. And yeah, I just loved it. I loved Cersei, I loved the character development. I don't really know anything about the actual myth of Cersei, and I feel like maybe I should do a little bit of research and do a bit of comparison. But even just to read it and take it at face value and imagine that it's just an entirely fictional book that Madeline Miller has created with no basis, it was so good. I don't know if you can tell that I really liked it, and of course I immediately lent it out to someone, which again is a sure sign that I've really enjoyed a book. Yes, definitely a 5-star read for me. Could talk about it all day long. Thought it was fantastic, but I'm not going to waffle on any longer about it. If you are in two minds about picking it up and reading it, then just do it. Just do it, see what you think. You might love it as much as I did. So there you go, they are the books that I read in the month of July. As I said, I had a pretty good reading month in July, and I enjoyed almost everything that I read, which is always good. Do let me know what your favourite book to read in July was. I always love to know. As always, thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you aren't already. Give me the thumbs up if you enjoyed this, leave me a comment, and I will see you all soon.